Hello everyone, Freedom Legacy Group. Finn here today talking with Geoff Nicholson. I think we're at issue number 6 or 7 podcast interview. We're going to have a lovely conversation because Geoff is a good friend of mine. He is a big inspiration to me when I was looking at evolving a coaching career few years back now. Oh, it's a little while ago, isn't it? But before I take any more time, Geoff, can you quickly please just introduce yourself? I will say Geoff is a mindset coach. He's been in business a long time. He's a speaker and he's got a podcast. He's what's it, over nearly 200 episodes now?
Yeah,
Geoff?
It's coming up to 200 are recorded. There's 190, I think, out there.
Okay, 32 different countries, top 10 in the UK, top 50 in the USA. So he's been around the block. He knows what he's talking about. Geoff, over to you.
Hi. So as Finn said, I'm Geoff Nicholson. I am a performance and mindset coach, and I work with business owners and professionals, helping them ultimately to identify their biggest block that's stopping them from achieving that level of success that they're looking for, and then supporting them to look at what I call a holistic version of success, so they can go out and achieve exceptional results in life and business.
I love that holistic version of success.
Indeed.
Because we were chatting earlier, Geoff, and you said, you brought up something that I think holds a lot of people back.
Mm-hmm.
I think subconsciously they have an idea of what success should mean. Yes. and what it is to us, particularly in the West. But you have a very different perspective on that. Can we start there? Just because you've got a fascinating story, and I always find it inspiring. So if you could just talk a little bit about what your version of success is and how you convey that to people you work with.
Yeah, so for me, the reason why I call it holistic success is I think some of the biggest problems is so many people are not achieving the results that they're wanting is because they're pursuing someone else's version, whether it's parents, teachers, people of influence, and even more so now in the world of social media, we are consumed by other people's identity of what success means. And there's nothing wrong with wanting the nice car, the nice house and everything. However, if you think you are doing something wrong to achieve your version of success, and because you say, well, hang on, I don't want the flash car, or I don't want a family, I just want to be me and my partner, whatever that is if you're pursuing against someone else's, there's always going to be that confrontation, there's always going to be that conflict of interest. And because there's that conflict, it doesn't sit right. So therefore, probably in many ways, we're going to sabotage our progress because we're not achieving a natural flow. So if you want to have a nice little bungalow in the country that has 300 cats, then that's fine if that's something that you want to achieve. I think the problem being is because we are consumed by everything, many people don't have the confidence to go, well, this is what I'm actually looking for and this is what I'm going for. And I think your success should be able to be filled in 3 words. I don't think you need a long paragraph of script or positive rhetoric or whatever the hell you want to call it. I think really when you find the powerful word, and those words will mean something to you as an individual. So for me, it's freedom, flexibility, and fun. Now, to other people out there, they might go, well, I don't know what that means. Well, you're not supposed to. The only person that's supposed to know what it means is me as an individual. So when you can go through and go, okay, I want legacy, happiness, and prosperity, whatever that means to you. And I think is going out and going, okay, this is what I'm going to look for, because your definition of success is the fuel that keeps you going during the challenging times. As we know, certainly through what we've experienced recently, is if you haven't got something that's driving you forward during the challenging times, it's a lot harder to get up in the morning and go, okay, I'm going to go after this. But if you can really hook into the reason and what your personal definition of success is, then really, for me, I think that's a superpower, because all of a sudden, as you're going, okay, I know what I'm doing it for. The world around me may be going mad. People may be telling me that I'm crazy and that it's not something I should be doing. But if I truly believe in my heart that this is the right thing to do, then all my energy, efforts, and focus is going to be going into that direction.
Absolutely. You said something just now, and I've sort of coined that phrase. I think people get distracted from success by what's going on around them. And I can certainly attest to that, because that's why goal setting never worked for me. Because I was setting the goals that didn't mean really anything. They were they coming from the shoulds and ought tos and possiblies, but it would be quite nice if I did that. But it wasn't. I like that thing of I've been doing a lot of work on, what does aligned purpose mean? And I think it's such a refreshing take, because I think wherever you go, whether social media, LinkedIn, talking to friends and family, this notion of what success is
it's ego driven as well.
It's a lot. Yes.
It's my neighbors are going to think I'm really successful if I've got a Porsche on the drive rather than a Volvo. But in truth, you shouldn't give a damn what the neighbors next door think. If you like the Volvo over an Aston Martin, buy a Volvo. You might buy a Volvo because it's safer for your family. It has nothing to do with how prestigious the car is. You're looking for you're looking at your version of success for that car. So it's making sure that when you're doing these things, and you said before, alignment, everything you do in a plan should align from the habits that you do on a day-to-day basis to your definition of success. And when it aligns, no one's going to say that there's not going to be challenges and curveballs in life, because that's what happens in life. But you're more likely to achieve that because everything's moving in the same direction and you're not going off kilter, or you've got things to bring you back on track very, very quickly, because you know exactly why you're doing it and what you're doing it from the very basic step right the way up to the intangible, that you're going to pursue.
And, with this idea of holistic version of success. So how do you approach that with individuals, particularly in what we've just been through? Because, it's such a massive shift that people have had to deal with. And we know how, the brain is not really set up to deal with massive fear and challenge. It kind of goes into old patterns and programs just for survival mode
and self-protection mode.
Exactly. So what would you kind of suggest? I mean, there's no definite right and wrong way to do it, but as somebody who's been through their own individual challenges, personally and business-wise and so on, what would you sort of suggest with that?
So I can only, and I will only ever speak from my own personal experiences, because that's the only reason I can be an expert in what I do, is because I don't grab it from someone else and go, well, this is what you should do. So when I was going through the recovery of my illness and I got to this point, and I started to kind of like look at my life and go, okay, well, what is it that I need to do? And I think you're right. What we have to understand is about what's going on in the world right now is all we should ever really concentrate is what we can control. So the reality is what's going on with COVID, or any health issues or anything, or Brexit in the UK or whatever's going on, we always still should come back fundamentally to go, well, what is it that I actually can control and do in order to move it? So even in the worst possible cases, I'll always go back and go, okay, well, what is it that you can control? And so the model, the kind of like the holistic idea came from when I was getting my health back and looking at re-establishing my life in a exceptional way, not a normal way. I don't like normal. So it was looking at, and life starts or life moves in shifts. So when I looked at that and when I thought about that, I looked at the most important areas of my life and going, right, well, if I can work on these key core pillars in my life and I can move them in a healthy way forward, okay, I'm doing a good thing. Because the reason being is most of the time people will focus on one area. So let's say it's financial or health or something like that. What they'll do is they'll burn a whole lot of attention into this one little bit. And what happens is the bits around them gets neglected. Yeah. So what happens is you very much have that yin and yang experience, because at 1 minute everything's moving forward, but then you turn your head and you realize, well, actually, I've spent so much time working on the business that my relationships are being affected or something like that. So the reason why I look at holistic is because it's a whole. Work is not the be all and end all. Physical health is not the be all and end all. What we need to look at is the whole. So I came up with the acronym of SHIFTS, which stands for self, I'm dyslexic, so it's going to be a weird spelling. It's self, health, income, family stroke friends, time, and support. So if we break that down, okay, we should always start with us first. It's something I teach. I've taught for a long time about being positively selfish. So when we're looking at ourselves, we have two elements. How much time are we dedicating to self-development? So, and that isn't just necessarily skills to move us forward in business, but what are we doing for ourselves to get us to where we need to be? Because our life will affect the people around us and be affected by the things around us. And our duty is to make sure that we are at our optimal place. Number one rule is protect your asset. You are the asset. You're the asset to your family, the business, everything. So you've got to make sure that you're looking after that. And then the second part of self is, how is your self-esteem or self-confidence? Because if you don't have the confidence and the self-respect of yourself, then you're probably not going to challenge yourself to go and do the other things in life. You're not,
if you're not putting the work into that, it's like a vicious circle.
It is, absolutely. Absolutely. You've got to do the work. Look, I'm from the northeast of England. We're miners, shipbuilders, and I'm 6'4" and I'm not a small bloke. When people started to tell me prior to me realizing that I had to do more work on me, I always used to laugh at them and go, no, medicine will fix me. That's all I need. I just need to go to the doctors, they'll give me a pill and that's it. But actually there's so much more work to do. So that's the self bit. Then we go to health, and that's, well, we've got different aspects of our health: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What do they look like? Are we spending so much time on being able to look in a mirror and have a six-pack, but actually when the stuff hits the fan, we're unable to process it? Or we can't have a good conversation with our team or family members because our emotional intelligence isn't really up to snuff, and we don't read that sort of thing. Our empathy is quite low or something like that. And then obviously our spiritual stuff. Now, it doesn't have to be religious, but it's what is it that at its deepest level motivates you and moves you forward? You know, what does that feel like? But people don't assess those things. They go for the easy ones in some ways. You know, it's easy to go for a run than it is to actually look at myself in the mirror and go, I need to do some work on me. You know, that's 100%. The reality of it, you know? Yeah. Then we have income, 3 aspects of income: what we make, what we save, and how much we owe. So because again, if our income isn't right, well, that affects our health, and it also can affect our relationships, and it can affect, you know, our time and all of that. So the reason why we look at holistic is to make sure that we're paying attention to everything and moving it forward, and not dropping the ball, so to speak, on one of the major things that we're kind of go, no, it'll fix itself.
And I'm just looking at, I've written the word shifts here. Income is pretty much in the middle of that word.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
And you've got to do the self work, the health work, before you get to the income. Because if you just focus on the income's going to fall apart if you haven't got the scaffolding around it.
Totally.
And then from there you can actually build on the family and all and the time and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting because I really realized that, you know, I'd focus time on so many other aspects. But the central pillar was the one that was really, really weak. And then I started working on it, but I realized that I couldn't do anything about that central pillar, because what was causing that central pillar to be weak was a need to grow the spiritual health and some of the other aspects. So it's just something I just saw. Like, oh, it sits right. It's a really important thing, but it's not the be all and end. But we need these scaffoldings around. I mean, I love that. You've got to build the whole thing.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 15 years, and the amount of people I've worked with who have got the money but are still miserable as sin. You know, and that's, I think that's the thing. I mean, how many times do we see on TV celebrities and wealthy people who have fallen back to addiction or something because the key things are missing from them having that. You know, the thing that they've strived for was possibly fame and income, but you know, if they're looking at stability ultimately, you know, to have that is such an important element and part. And then of course then it links to family and friends and making sure, you know, not everyone gets on well with their family, but actually what you are able to do is choose the friends around you. So make sure that you do choose the right ones, but you do spend time with them. Because sometimes we can be consumed by doing, you know, right, okay, I'm going to sit down and work my backside off to get this thing done. But actually again, an energy source of re-energizing is social interaction. It's not just with your friends and it's not just with your family. It's with the people around you that make you laugh, can sometimes make you forget what is going on, and it disconnects you for a little bit. All of that is such a vital element to building the success that you're actually looking for. You know, time, two sets of time, productivity and free time. A huge amount of people don't have free time. You know, they'll charge up at the weekend and then go and do the rat race during the week and then repeat the cycle. They don't, and free time's an interesting one, because free time could be that you're going out with your family. It's what is fun for you. It's what allows you to disconnect from the rat race to go and do the things. If it's, you know, when was the last time you assessed on what your hobbies were? Or you wanted to learn a new language, or, you know, learn to paint or whatever it is, or take your kids every week to go and do something. Those things, again, re-energize you, because most people I work with, they've done their business to help their families. So why are they spending so much time working on one at the risk of losing another, when you can work together in a better harmony to actually move them in the right direction? Now, all relationships don't work, of course they don't, but the amount of relationships that are certainly in the entrepreneurial sphere that have actually been damaged because of the fact they're working their backsides off to try and build the business that gives their family the right life. And actually what they've ended up done in almost the perverse science is they've neglected the people that they love the most because they're trying to build something. And then productivity as well. I mean, are you actually being productive in the time you've set aside to be productive? Or are you mincing around just doing the same things without actually dedicating some real focused time to do it? Because if you are surrounded by distractions, it can take you between 20 to 30 minutes to get back to a state of what they call flow. So some people have an environment designed to never let them get into that state. You know, so you've got to control your environments. You've got to take charge and, you know, choose and identify where you work best for specific roles. So if I'm content creating, as long as it's not on a video like this, I would be in a cafe, sitting around people, watching people going, okay, that's interesting, why they're doing that. And some of my blog titles and my blog content or my topics for questions and podcasts comes from the fact that I've sat and watched some people do stuff and going, I don't grasp that. Or actually, there's an interesting lesson, you know. And then the final one, support, most important bit, you know, it's what's your support structure look like?
Yeah.
You've got different elements. You've got teams, if you have a team, you've got associates, and the biggest one of all is the cheerleaders. Who's got your back?
Absolutely.
You know, because our partners aren't always the best cheerleaders. They are in one aspect, but when the stuff hits the fan or it becomes challenging, they go into, I want to support, I want this family to survive, and that's their primary goal. They don't necessarily understand the challenges of running a business or owning a business, because maybe they're employed or maybe they're homemakers, you know. So you've got to make sure that the people that you speak to and have within that cheerleader section are people that you can be openly and honest to go, you know, today is absolutely terrible. This is rubbish. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to phone up Finn, because at least we can have a conversation. He's going to ground me. He's going to kick me up the butt, and we're going to go and get the focus. That you've got to have that. And obviously then there's coaching and masterminding and that sort of stuff behind it. I haven't met a successful person yet that doesn't have some sort of coach or mentor that holds them accountable, because the reality is that most people, as much as we like to say we can't hold ourselves accountable to do the stuff. We make excuses, and you know, we're at the top of the spear from that point. So who do you speak to when you're at the tip of the spear?
Yeah,
you've got to have someone that's holding you accountable, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as much as we like to think we can, you know, the brain really there are exceptions to this rule.
Of course there is, absolutely.
There are exceptions to it. Some people are just, they just on it 24/7, and they operate in a different realm, as far as I'm concerned. But the brain really is kind of hardwired for an easy ride.
It is,
you know, and there is always an element of sacrifice and commitment and so on. And I put something up the other day, you know, it's that support around you. And it's so easy to get kind of pulled into your little sphere and your little bubble, and you tell yourself stories that you believe till you're blue in the face. But actually, it's really good to have somebody seeing it from a different perspective. And which brings me to this: you've interviewed a lot of successful people. People who've grown businesses and all nature of businesses. And what's the, it must be very difficult. I don't want to say to you, what's the one thing that's really stood out? But could you just, is there a common theme? Is there a common denominator that you've managed to glean from speaking to these people that's inspired you?
Yeah. So the common, so first of all, I guess there's several common habits that keep coming out. It doesn't matter who I interview or what area of their expertise. And obviously I'm looking, I don't speak any other language. So everyone I've spoken to is generally Western or very, very good at speaking English. So from a, I guess from a culture point of view, it's probably it's lopsided. Journaling, meditation, and dedicating at least an hour and a half a day to learning have generally always come up in one way, shape or form. So journaling, I didn't used to, because it challenged me, I guess, but journaling is great because if you get the right system in place, and I use the 5-minute journal because it asks you questions. So it removes the difficulty of what do I write, how do I write it. The first thing within the journaling practice that most of them do is the gratitude. And I found this really useful when I was ill, because when I was going through the depression and stuff, the one thing I had to learn was to appreciate the small things. See, when we're grateful, when we think about it, it's like, you know, I need something big and epic to happen in my life to be grateful for. But actually, if you can open the window and be grateful of the birds singing or the light breeze or the smell of freshly cut grass, there is very little that you will not be grateful for in the challenging times. but that is like anything, it's a muscle that needs to be developed, you know. But writing 3 things every day of what you're grateful for, and you know, the cheat would be, well, I've got 2 boys and I've got a wife I've been together with for 25, 30 years. Right, that's 3. Well, actually, well, what is it about that specific child?
Yeah.
Or what is it about that specific thing that you thought about your wife that day? Those sort of things, because what it does is it helps when you're having, let's just say, it helps when you're having a little bit of a relational rough patch, because you can go,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly why I love that woman, or I love that man, or I love that person, whatever it is. The same with the kids, because, you know, we love our kids, but by God, sometimes they can frustrate you. You know, and it's like, well, what is it specifically? What is it about that specific child or pet or whatever that I actually think the world of? Yeah. And then the other thing is that specific journal process asks you specific questions for you to focus on about a result. What you've got to be very careful about journaling, though, is make sure that it's not a way just to collect negative thoughts. It always should be a way to process negative, but always end in a positive, because journaling should be a way to get it out of your head onto a piece of paper, so you can kind of like go, all right, okay, this is what I've thought and processed about it. Because while it's eating away at your head, especially if it's a negative one, it's not doing you any good. So you get it out and do it. Meditation, really, it's about just learning to focus. It's giving yourself some self-time, self-care, self-appreciation. But another attribute of that is practicing to focus, you know, removing the distractions and going, I'm dedicating some time to me, and actually learning. You're not going to be a Buddhist monk in 2 days. You know, and you're never going to not hear anything. There's always going to be something, but the idea is you just let it pass. And of course, we've got tech now to help us, you know, so you've got Headspace or Calm or Insight Timer. There's tons of different apps you can use. Or there's going to classes, you know, finding a meditation center or something and going, I'm going to do this for real. But, you know, it's just about taking some self-care. And then the final one is the dedication to learning. You know, I swore to myself, because I left school at 16, basically because I wasn't very good at it. But, you know, as I kind of like went, right, I'm out of school, I'm never going to learn. I'm never going to pick up a book and learn again. And then, you know, what was it, 20 years later, you know, I've got 5 plastic boxes full of books that I go through. I'm constantly writing notes and thoughts. I'm listening to Blinkist or looking through articles, because I can choose what I want to learn now. I'm not being forced to learn about the Roman Empire, which really doesn't bother me, or learning about, you know, trading or Forex or, you know, any of that. Yeah. I'm actually choosing what I want to learn, and I'm becoming a better person because of that. Yeah. But the other thing is parking the ego. I think that's a big one, is a lot of people, especially, you know, alpha personalities, kind of go, no one can teach me anything. Or they want, but actually to try some of these more softer skills, you know, they train special forces to meditate and practice breathing exercises, because it gets them to focus. You know, one of the first things they train special forces is about breathing and the power of breath, and the fact that breath controls every other emotion that goes on around us. Yeah. We've got to park that ego and go, I'll try it. And if I don't like it, fair enough. But I haven't got much patience for someone that hasn't tried it, but is prepared to say it's rubbish, to do it. And I learned that from when I was ill and I had to do all these weird and wonderful different therapy strategies. You know, and I would go and do crystal healing. If they said it would work, then I'm going to try it. It didn't personally work for me, but I was prepared to go, okay, let's give it a go. You know, so I think there's all of that willingness to get out there and go and do these things.
I think that whole thing of, you know, parking the ego is you know, you don't, it's not like parking your car. You don't park it and then it's
No.
there.
No.
It's a commitment to that process of letting
Absolutely.
it go.
Absolutely.
And you may never let the ego go.
No.
And it's I think ego's
it's
got
good
this
in its place.
It's good in its place, absolutely. And I think this whole, there's a message there that, you know, can you surrender a little bit more? Can you become a bit more aware, open yourself up to more opportunities, possibilities, and ways of creating a better you? I think is a different way of approaching it.
Absolutely.
Because when I first sort of, you know, delved into this, it was like, oh, I used it as a judgment against me.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people subconsciously do, because they focus on the right and the wrong.
Yes.
And I gave up I gave up right and wrong, the actual words for, and I still try very, very consciously not to use them. And I mean, I heard a great quote this morning, you know, from Rumi, you know, there is no right and wrong, but somewhere beyond, I shall meet you there. You know, and I went, and when you go within and spend time with those, the inner you, then the ego gets to weaken. It gets to lose its grip on the dictates of how your life is going.
Well, Ryan Holiday's got some good books in his Stoicism books and stuff. And I know I read a couple of Wayne Dyer's books. I mean, what he described ego as edging God out, but he comes from that sort of very spiritual side. But the Tao Te Ching has got some great things as well. You know, it's when you try to identify the Tao, you've already lost it. And it's like, well, that is such a cop-out. But actually, it's just about being and going through it. And it's hard because we've got so much stuff coming in from social media and news and everything, that we really have to be very selective of what we allow to affect us as ourselves, because also that then from my point of view, that then passes on to our children. So if 100%. I can be good, if I can be better, and I'm a better parent now because of my illness than I was, because actually the lessons that I've learned will allow them to be, because they're the next generation, and their bad habits are mainly going to be from my bad habits, and my bad habits are from my dad's bad habits. So, and my mum. So, you know, all of that takes on its effect and its journey.
And, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's so easy to go, I'm like this because that's the way I am, because of so and so and so and so, which is where I was. And but raising that awareness and doing that introspective work, and actually holding your hands up, going, I'm the one who's responsible. I can break that cycle, break that chain of, you know, you're not gonna completely write the program.
No.
But I think there's a lot of you know, what's the word? There's a lot of courage that has to come from within in order to do that. And it's not, I think a lot of people get confused about, oh, it's all about me, I need to make myself better because I'm to blame, or it's a very different, it's a more holistic way of approaching. Go, we can divert the course of this river, but it's, I think the judgment, the comparison, the criticism, and all those things that you've mentioned can really help to ease that process, that journey. And the journey never really ends, does it?
No, and we have to be willing to have conversations. Like one of the hardest conversations I ever had with my kids was, out of 10, how do you rate me as a dad? And I did that deliberately, because I'd literally not really been, well, certainly from my feeling is I hadn't really been a dad for about 6 years because of my illness. So coming out and having to, I guess in one way, reassert myself as a dad. I was, you know, I went to them and, you know, what could I do better and what can I be? And I've done that with my wife as well, is out of 10, what's our relationship? You know, you never want to hear lower than a sort of 7, 8. You know, ideally you always want to be up 9, but there'll be times But that for me is the icebreaker, because I'm not saying it's your fault. What I am saying is I want to help change the situation. So, you know, my kids, I call them my dream team, my wife and my boys. And for me, there's not a prouder moment than being a dad. I want to be the best dad I can, but I know I'm going to cock up. You know, I know I'm not going to be great. And having the conversations with your kids now, an awful lot of the time when my boys are at home, they're in the office just chatting, as much as I'd love to do my work, but they're in the office chatting. And I couldn't have loved it anymore. But sometimes you've got to be, you know, sometimes you've got to be the dad, and sometimes you can be the friend. And what I try to do is make that gap very, very close.
Yeah.
So they know when I'm being the dad and they know when I'm being the friend. But ultimately, it's just always about being supportive.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to be vulnerable yourself in order for your children or the people who are dear to you to be vulnerable to you. You
have to be willing to let the truth of who you are be fully evident all the time. Yeah. And you know, it's not easy, you know, and it's not meant to be easy.
But it's liberating.
It's liberating, but it's an environment where there's learning, you know.
Absolutely.
If it was all plain sailing, you wouldn't be growing and evolving and developing.
No.
Geoff, one final question before we finish.
Yes.
On your website, there's a quote you've got there that I think is yours. It says, you know, one conversation can change a life. Is something like that?
Yeah. One conversation can create a lifetime of results.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that because where I'm at, that's been evident for me. And when you look back and I go, God, I heard that one thing, and boom, something changed and something shifted.
Yep.
What happened to you? What brought that to the forefront of you? Because we've had a lot of good conversations in the past. Yeah. And and I've worked with you, and you opened my eyes to lots of different things. So I'm just curious where that came from. I've always meant to ask you that.
Right. Okay. So I guess ultimately, there's two parts of that. From a business point of view, I'm in the coaching side. So everything I do is conversational based, and the results will determine on part of it, because the other part is whether the client does the work. Let's be honest. Is about making sure that the conversations you have are always empowering, inspiring, and gives the client or the person that you're talking to a positive outcome ultimately. For me, I also then look at that and I go, well, it's not only the external conversations that create a lifetime of results, it's the internal conversations as well.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And my role, because when I first got better and I started doing this, my original or what I wanted to train in was hypnotherapy and NLP, because I was fascinated by the language and I knew how it affected me and my recovery, but also I was fascinated by how some simple words can be done and how that influences people and how we talk and how often we actually use negative language as a way of doing it. So for me, being the conductor of a conversation and allowing that conversation to create a positive outcome was the key thing. And I can't remember what I was doing. I think I was going for a walk with the dog. And I just said, that's what I do. I always look for win-win, and it's always about the conversation. And then I podcast as well, and I speak. So all of a sudden is these conversations that you can have. And it's funny because when I guess it's allowing, maybe it's an energy transferring, but there'll be people that have conversation with me and go, I would never have admitted that before. I don't understand why I've done that with you. And for me, it's the power of conversation. It's the natural want to help someone to succeed. It's just something that I love to do. So for me, and one conversation can create it. because all you need is that to create a paradigm shift.
Sure.
So if you can have that conversation and you can help someone change, of course, the caveat to that is, as I said before, they have to be willing to do the work. And unfortunately, statistics say that a lot of people don't. You know, they say they do, but saying and doing are very, very different. But having those conversations, you know, it can be a low effort to pick up the phone and have a conversation, but actually having that conversation and then engaging in that conversation 100%, the results can, as I say, it can be exceptional. It's just you've got to be prepared to have the courage to pick up the phone and go, I'm stuck. I need help, because that is without doubt the most courageous thing you will ever do in your life. And it's once that ball starts rolling, and once they're prepared to have those conversations with people to make a positive impact, because they've got the want, but the doing is the next phase. Yeah. The dream to the do can be a little bit of a challenge. Yeah. And I've seen it countless times, and it's remarkable things can happen. They don't always it's not always a fairy tale. Don't get me wrong, from a reality point of view, but life can change from adversity in so many beautiful ways. You've just got to be prepared to look further than the dark trees, I guess. Oh,
what a fantastic way to draw this conversation to a close. If people want to find out about how they can make those shifts, have that powerful conversation with you.
Yep.
I'm going to put your links and so on below this interview. So, but what's the quickest way? What's the easiest way for you for them to engage with you?
Okay, so the quickest way would be jump onto the website. It's www.geoffnicholson.co.uk. English speaking Geoff, Geoff. And you can WhatsApp me from the site. You can touch a little speech bubble from there, or you can email me in a contact form, and we can make a conversation happen really quickly.
Awesome. And Geoff is a master at delivering very persuasive, powerful, transformational conversations, folks. I can attest to that. Geoff, thank you so much. I think we need to do another one of these next year, because we could talk and discuss and chat and rage. It's been fantastic to see you. Thank you for coming on to the Freedom Legacy group, and have a fantastic Christmas.
You too. All the best, mate. Take care.
Cheers.